Harbaugh right now.
Right. So our goals would be to beat Ohio State and Michigan State in the same year, win the Big Ten championship, and win the national championship. Those are our 4 goals.
All right, welcome in. That was Jim Harbaugh just moments ago on the stage in Indianapolis, taking part of the morning session of the Big Ten Coaches Meetings 2022. That's a long title, but it's also a big event, and they're covering it for the Maize and Blue Review is our senior editor, Brandon Justice, who is on the line in between those morning sessions, and he's going to spend a couple minutes with us. Brandon, great to see you. How's Indianapolis?
Oh, it's good to see you too, Dennis. And it's packed. A lot of people here. I'm in the media workroom. First time that it's been at Lucas Oil Stadium. First time that all this stuff on a football field. And usually it's in Chicago at the Regency Center. So a new look and a new feel. It's got a little bit more of a football type of feel to it. And, you know, like I always say, this is a kind of a gateway to the football season is what Media Day kind of serves as. So this year a little bit more authentic, I think. So things are good.
Well, it gets my juices flowing. Jim Harbaugh, that's the best place to start. The Michigan coach was the last to speak in the morning sessions. What was your takeaway from Jim Harbaugh? How'd you think he did?
I think it's business as usual for Jim Harbaugh. He is who he is, and he handled it the same way he normally does. And I know there was a little bit of a interesting answer at the end of his presser, but, you know, aside from that one, everything I think he handled well. I think he was the only coach to get 2 questions from the junior journalists program, which is like some young children that get to live out some dreams here. I think one's like 12 and the other was like 14. So he was the only coach that had to answer 2 of those. So he had an interesting setup there. But I got asked about JJ and Cade, and I think the takeaway there was that that's still an open race. He said JJ's going to be a hard starting quarterback to beat out, and Cade's going to be a hard starting quarterback to beat out. I think we got confirmation that that's very much so a race. You know, aside from that, really, I think it was just business as usual. I think we'll get some more answers out of him when he does his breakout session at, I believe it's 3:30, where he will have a little bit more of a, I guess, sentimental type of. You're much closer to him. It's not like you have to stand in front of national television, state your name, and ask your question. So he'll probably field about 50 questions as opposed to the 10 he had to field a few moments ago. So my takeaway would just be business as usual, Harbaugh, and, you know, doing what he has to do, answer the right questions.
Yeah, much more non-formal coming up. I'm with you when you get to sit around and talk with him in a table setting. You know, the one-word answer was just a no at the end. Tom Crawford from up there in Lansing asking Harbaugh about the group of 5 teams that he's playing this year, Colorado State, Hawaii State, UConn, and it's the same thing on the slate. Then he was like, you think that's going to be the same or what? And he's like, I don't know. No, I don't know. And so, yeah, that was that. You always have to get a little bit of that from Harbaugh, a little bit of that flavor, and you got it. You know, as far as you mentioned it went through it when he talked about Cade McNamara and he was talking about the quarterback competition. When he said Cade's going to be tough to beat as the starter for like 1 second, I was like, whoa, he is named the starter. Cade's going to be tough. And then, like, you know, a second later, he's like, well, JJ's going to be tough to beat as the starter. I'm like, oh, okay. Oh, there you go. But for 1 second, it looked like he was declaring Cade as the starter.
Yeah, for a blip, I thought the same thing. But, you know, he's going to play that one close to the vest until the season, I think. I don't think that would shock any of us either. But, yeah, I know that last question. And I think the issue he took maybe is so he portrayed an issue that he took that question was that head coaches don't make the schedule. The athletic directors do. And I think he was pretty – I mean, I get it. Like, he probably could have said it a little bit better maybe. But I don't know. And Ask Ward Manual is the real answer to that question. So.
Well, that's what you get. Like some people like real easy looking non-conference schedule because they look at other teams that have also just scheduled W's, and the coach does have some input there. But, you know, it's one of those things when you get a schedule like this, he can't win now because he has to try to focus his team in on Colorado State when most people are like, oh, Michigan's going to be 3-0. You know, they could play Brandon Justice out there and Otis John Jr., who just messaged in, and the Wolverines, they could start 50 in that quarterback. And, you know, that's the way it goes. And you have a game like Notre Dame and Ohio State to lead things off. Everybody's going crazy about that, a very losable game, but not much you can do as a head coach. But that schedule does line up really well for Michigan. We've talked about that all off season, and it is part of it. I wonder if there's anything that you took away from the commissioner, Kevin Warren, at the beginning, or any of the other coaches, from Scott Frost to Kirk Ferentz to Loxley to Fleck, and any of the things that they had to say.
Well, I think everyone is pretty open and honest about what's going on in college football right now. It's growing exponentially. We've never seen it quite like it is right now, between NIL, between expansion, super conferences, and everything in between. So I think that was really the topic of conversation today throughout, from start to finish, from the commissioner on down to Harbaugh and every coach in between, was just the embracement of all the change that's occurring in college football in so many different ways, and how we're adjusting to that. And I think Kirk Ferentz probably was the best reference for that. Well, first off, because he's been doing this the longest. That's no secret. He's in his 24th year at Iowa. He's 33rd year. 24th year as the head coach at Iowa, 33rd year total at Iowa. So he's really seen this conference go from truly being the Big Ten, literally, into now becoming what could end up being the Big 16, or whatever you want to call it. And with that in mind, I think what we learned from Commissioner Warren's statements was that he's not only embracing the change, he's engineering the change and trying to be bold. He kept using the phrase, we want to be bold, we want to be bold, we want to be innovative. And I think that that's encouraging if you're a Big Ten fan, because this conference, based on what they're saying, they don't want to be left behind in all of this change. They want to be at the front of it. And so while other conferences may sit around and wait for other things to happen to make their move, the Big Ten is trying to get ahead of it. And they did that by adding USC and UCLA, who you mentioned will be full-time members in 2024 rather than having to wait. So I think Commissioner Warren probably offered the most information, and we probably learned the most from him today. As we know how these things go with head coaches, they're not going to really tell us a whole lot on a podium on the Big Ten Network at Big Ten Media Day. It's never how it's gone. It's a lot of coach speak, and then fair so, right? I mean, you can't blame him for doing that. So, but yeah, I would say we learned the most from Ferentz and from Commissioner Warren. But it's encouraging to know that the Big Ten is going to get at the front of this, right? And I think the biggest thing we learned from Warren was that he confirmed that the expansion in the future may occur again. They might not be done with just USC and UCLA. And we've heard all these reports about, Oregon and Notre Dame and Stanford and Washington and all these different teams. And, he emphasized academics, which makes you think that those truly are the schools they're looking at. And for him to confirm that they're looking towards further expansion sort of kind of gives you a little bit of peace of mind to know, okay, hey, this is going to happen. It's inevitable. It's just a matter of who it's going to be, when it's going to be, and how they're going to do it.
Brandon Justice has a minute or two more before he has to chase down the players and get out there on the field and continue working. He's got a little break here, and he's taking his break to spend a couple minutes with us. Yeah, when I get to Kirk Ferentz, the first part of what he talked about for a second, I was like, Kirk, you know better, because he said he was worried about where the state of the game is and the direction that it's going. And, I get him talking about school, and there's such a small amount of players that get a chance to play in the pros, and even fewer than that are going to be able to make a career out of it. There's the thing, though, and you said it, football right now, it's far and away, it's just out of sight with its popularity. We can't get enough. I mean, everybody wants to consume everything. So there comes a point, we could sit around here and talk about the value of an education, especially in a place like Michigan, and how much it's worth. 99.9% of everyone's like, man, get an education from Michigan, and having that and what it could do for you after that in the world. You're ahead of 99% of the people in the world. And then you've got this small little fraction of people that are now, because the money is so big that they're able to, gain millions, and on top of the potential of getting an education. So I get what Kirk Ferentz is saying, but, what are you going to do? You just can't stop. If Kirk Ferentz said, look, I made $33 million, I'm giving everything back, and I don't want the Big Ten to expand. I just want to, we just want to worry about, educating our players. Well, he might have a bigger leg to stand on there, but I mean, how are you going to stop progress?
Yeah, you can. You really can, especially given the fact that if the progress isn't going to happen in the Big Ten, it's going to happen in the SEC, which in turn hurts the Big Ten, or it's going to happen in the Pac-12, which in turn hurts the Big Ten, or it's going to happen in the Big 12, in turn hurts the Big Ten. So, it's just territory, right? And that's just how it goes. It kind of, to me, and this is going to be silly to some people, it kind of reminds me of like the 80s, 90s when wrestling promotions were getting robbed, right? We had so many wrestling promotions across the country. There was like 25 of them. Now they're down to really like, the two big ones, and that's pretty much it. But for a long time, it was just one. Vince McMahon, WWE, they went out there and bought all of them and made one super mega conference of wrestling. So it's kind of similar to that, in that we had at one point, you think about like 10, 20 years ago, how many conferences we had and how many teams were in each conference and the competition. And to me, what was back then a far more competitive top to bottom alignment in college football. It was more true to the traditions, but at the same time, Pac-10 teams could go play a team from the Mountain West Conference like a Boise State, and a Boise State could end up beating an Oklahoma out of the Mountain West, whereas now we're seeing Boise potentially ending up in like the Big 12 or the Pac-12, and all these teams are now becoming all the group of fives that we used to adore, the media darlings from 10, 20 years ago, are now becoming mainstays in the bigger conferences, and we're consolidating into these mega conferences. And how it plays out is truly a mystery at this point. We have a ton of theories and there's a ton of sources and all that. All we know is that the big picture is it's going to come down to mega conferences, and that's what's going to be. And the Big Ten is doing everything in their power to make sure that they're ahead of that. And at the same time, money speaks volumes, and they're trying to bring in the most money that they can to support their conference and to support the members of their conference. And by doing so, they're attracting a lot of schools to this conference. So credit to Commissioner Warren, who I know has faced some scrutiny throughout his tenure, as any commissioner would in such a position. I think he's done a good job here. I think today the statements he made and the podium session he had should have been encouraging to anyone interested in the Big Ten's further expansion and its success long term.
Well, this isn't saying a whole lot, but he was more engaging than Jim Delaney, who they used to stick on a Friday after everything was done. Everybody had already eaten lunch and everything. Everybody was falling asleep. Listening to the commissioner after 10 minutes. It was a little bit more lively from Kevin Warren. Plus, they stuck him at the beginning, which was a smart move because they knew by the end, everybody was like, I don't want to hear any of this. So, great job. You got to chase down Cade McNamara, Eric All. Who else we got?
Mozzie Smith will be here.
That's a good one.
And then we got a fourth one, too. I think we were only told 3 originally, but now we're up to 4. So, yeah, it should be a good time. I believe it might be Zach Zinner. But, yeah, we're looking forward to it. Should be good. These are the best times for the preseason, the breakout. I mean, I know the podium sessions just ended, but we hardly ever learn much from those podium sessions. It's really the breakouts where you kind of garner the quotes you're looking for and get the answers to the questions, not just yourself, but those around you. It's just you're able to field more questions. It's far more accessible, a little bit more of an intimate setting. So we'll get the players here at 1:15, and then we will get the Coach Harbaugh at 3:30, and Maize Blue Review will have that all tuned in for you. So make sure you go to the board. Great
job, Brandon. Best of luck out there. I was going to say, stay safe. You're in the mix with all those other media members. If you look down and it says, Columbus Dispatch, don't worry about it. You want to throw a little elbow in there, go ahead and throw it. It's all right.
I appreciate it, Dennis. I'll talk to you soon.
All right. Thanks for spending a couple minutes with us. There he is, Brandon Justice, live from Indianapolis. That's the way it's done. And Brandon could have. It really is like going to class. I spent 10, 11 straight years going to those Big Ten coaches meetings. And yeah, I might have stayed out. Like those are back in my younger days. I might have stayed out, when they was in Chicago, the restaurants were open till 4:00 in the morning. And so, yeah, you get in there, you just tell them to keep bringing the coffee. And once you listen to one coach get up there and, talk about how exciting it is to get back, and it's right around the corner, and he likes his team, and this guy's got some tough shoes to fill. I mean, all those kind of things. This is all kind of the same. You're waiting for that afternoon break, but Justice kind enough to take his break and spend it with us, and so that's where that whole thing was going. Let's bring in some feedback. You always have a chance to share your thoughts, and we get to it immediately. Otis J was mentioning right off the bat how he liked Harbaugh's approach today. No nonsense, just answered the questions. this Michigan fan didn't give a crap about non-conference games, knowing the AD did the scheduling, but his answer would not surprise me if J.J. McCarthy starts the first game. Yeah, whoever you're a fan of, you wait till your coach to go up there and you're like, okay, how did he do? There's been some times where you think like, coach was a little bit embarrassing, or, coach didn't handle this question. Jim Harbaugh, I would give him, I'm a tough grader. When somebody is sitting around talking about how great, but I'll give Harbaugh an A. He handled himself well up there, got right to it. And his what I thought was his favorite answer was the one that I used to start the show when he was asked about this upcoming season. This is what he said.
Right. So our goals would be to beat Ohio State and Michigan State in the same year, win the Big Ten championship, and win the national championship. Those are our 4 goals.
All right, 4 goals from Jim Harbaugh. Beat State, beat the Buckeyes, win the Big Ten championship, and win the college football playoff. I'll take all 4. How about 3 out of those 4? Now, winning the national championship, you that can't be one. It could be. I guess they could lose to Ohio State or Michigan State, because they lost to Michigan State last year and still were in position to do all those things. So I'll take 3 out of the 4 if national championship is still included in there, but I wouldn't want to. But I would also take beating Michigan State, Ohio State, and winning the Big Ten again. Saying just getting to the college football playoff, I would take. Usually I don't do this when somebody offers me a deal, but if you were offering to me here today, would you take Michigan just, put the air quotes for people that are just listening on the pod, getting back to the college football playoff? I would take it. I would take it. Now, I didn't like the Orange Bowl. In fact, I hated the Orange Bowl right off the bat. It wasn't like, Michigan was hanging tough or something with the Dogs. The Dogs went right down to the field. Their tight end went right into the end zone. I mean, the game looked like it was over before it started. I would like them to play a more competitive semifinal, but I would take getting to the college football playoff today. And they would beat Michigan State, and they would beat Ohio State, and they would win another Big Ten title. Yeah, I would take that. And like I said, I usually don't take those kind of hypotheticals. We have a DJ who is asking me what's up. He says, keep up the good work. He's been looking for media day coverage all day. They put the SEC and ACC on almost immediately. He's looking forward to the analysis. And DJ Turner, he mentions as the 4th. That is the 4th. So it's all Cade McNamara, Mozzie Smith, and DJ Turner. Those are 4 real nice selections for the Wolverines. You can have 4 all Big Ten performers right there. Turner came on last year. Mozzie Smith is a stud and is going to provide some pass rush as well as a run defense there in the middle. He'll be getting after the quarterback. I don't think anybody doubts that. And then all had a crazy good last year, and hell, he could be an All-American this year. A lot of good tight ends, because I mentioned the tight end for Georgia, Bowers, not his name. Notre Dame's got a really good tight end. Tight end position's really stacked. They got little Gronk there in South Bend, but all's not taking a back seat to many. And then we get to the quarterback competition, and for a second, I thought Jim Harbaugh was saying, "Yeah, Cade McNamara." I think Cade McNamara is going to be a difficult quarterback to beat out as a starter. But yeah, like I have said, and have made my predictions, that I think JJ ultimately will be able to do that. That's going to be one of the themes. Of course, I think we all agree on that as well. The quarterback competition and how it plays out. Paul on Clubhouse, you can get us on the app Clubhouse. Paul is saying that he liked when Warren said further expansion beyond USC and UCLA is possible, and he quoted the bold approach towards major changes in college athletics. and he says he's happy with the Big Ten champion. He would be happy with a Big Ten championship and or a Rose Bowl. So, okay. Now, speaking of Kevin Warren, can I watch some Kevin Warren? Let me see.
And that these individuals who all they were trying to do is to get a chance to vote. And so that's why I take it personal when I see individuals, young or old, kind of ignore the right to vote. And so that's
Kevin Warren talking about the right to vote there in Indianapolis. We just parachuted in on his answer. I didn't know what he was talking about. So I do know that Mel Tucker took a trip to the South to Selma, Montgomery. Could be talking about that trip from the Spartans head coach. He did mention Jim Harbaugh doing some positive things off the field. Let's go back to the feedback where Jeremy says, surprised we didn't have much conversation about name, image, and likeness like other conference media days. Yeah, I think, Jeremy, you're right. I would have guessed if we had some kind of, I guess it wouldn't be weird. People like gambling. If we were putting some kind of over and under on how many questions would be asked about name, image, and likeness, I think the under came in the morning session. Jim Harbaugh was not asked about it. I watched, let me see, all of them. Scott Frost and Mike Loxley definitely commented on. Loxley talking about where Maryland is located in the television markets and the amount of money his guys are able to make because of the concentration of the population there. Scott Frost was giving a shout out to local businesses around Lincoln who have stepped up, and I'm paraphrasing him that he expects them to continue to step up when it comes to name, image, and likeness. And we had already mentioned that Kirk Ferentz was worried. He, in his opening statement, about the direction of the game, and I believe, like I think everybody else, that he was referring to the money that the players are able to get right now. All right, so what are some of the other things that we're talking about? Well, the preseason poll came out. I wanted to hit on that. There has been some college football playoff scuttlebutt. Now, we mentioned the commissioner, Kevin Warren, who we just saw there on the Big Ten Network talking, and he addressed everybody, started everything out this morning, and he said he was, quote, let's see if I have the quote. I do have it. Kevin Warren is, quote, 100% behind a playoff expansion, unquote. So we have something further on that other than just the quote. The preseason poll that Cleveland.com, they used to have the media that was there in Indianapolis or Chicago at the coaches meetings. They used to conduct a poll, and everybody's like, well, we don't like polls. And then they would include the poll in kind of the press kit. And then the coaches were like, we don't like the polls or whatever else. So then Cleveland.com just picked up the baton and said, well, we'll run the poll. And it's been a good job by them. Some people don't like it because it's, in Ohio. That's understandable. Some people don't like it because it's the media, and what the hell do they know? And still other people have looked back at how the media have voted, and they actually haven't done that great of a job with picking who actually comes out of the Big Ten East and West. They're below 500. Having said all of that, it was a unanimous selection for Ohio State to the Big Ten East. They got 36 first place votes. And if I was making my own Big Ten East poll, you could have added 37. I do think Michigan is going 11-0, but I do think they will end up 11-1, and that one loss would be down at Columbus. I also think that there's a lot of people that are predicting what I am, and I think a lot of people will flip-flop and predict Michigan, even though they have them going 11-0, will then predict them to beat Ohio State, because you're going to have 11 games, and you're going to have that feeling, that it's due, and that stuff, and you'll flip your prediction, and anybody can flip their prediction anytime they want. But as we sit here today, I would have picked Ohio State number one in the Big Ten East. I would have picked Michigan second. Like I said, I think they're going 11-0. I have Michigan State, and I would have put the Spartans in front of the Nittany Lions at 3, then I would have had Penn State. I don't have a problem with how it plays out there. Would I maybe have moved? I'm not as big on Tagovailoa. I mean, he's Talia, Tua's younger brother. He throws a lot of touchdowns, throws a lot of picks. So he gives and takes away. I think I would put Rutgers. I think Schiano's a pretty good coach. I'll put Rutgers in front of Maryland, and I'll put I'd flip a coin maybe between Maryland and Indiana. I'm not going to lose too much sleep over how I would have predicted them. So my difference would have been Rutgers up 1, Maryland down 1, Michigan State up 1, Penn State down 1. That's how I would have voted it. Meanwhile, out in the Big Ten West, I would have put Whiskey. I mean, Whiskey's they've got their typical type team. Big offensive line and a running back and a typical defense that Christ is going to play there. I would have voted for Wisconsin as well. The Minnesota, I like more. Iowa, I don't think is going to be as good as they were last year. Iowa came up huge, led the country in interceptions and turnovers, and that they get one of their 3 back and the back end of their secondary. I just think Iowa, when you don't have an offense that can cross the street, and the Hawkeyes don't have an offense that can cross the street, it's going to be tough to win some ball games. It's fine that you play defense and rely on the turnover game and everything else. I don't have Iowa as number 2. I have Minnesota. Minnesota's got maybe the best running back in the country. I like Fleck as the head coach. They're a little bit disappointing last year, but I'd have Minnesota there too. I like Purdue more than I like Iowa too. Usually you'd say, hey, you take defense over offense, that wins championships. But, Purdue, they've got a tough offense to stop. That's going to win them a lot of ball games. I don't think it's going to win them the Big Ten West, but I'll put Purdue in front of Iowa. I actually think Scott Frost is going to win some of those ball games. I don't know. He's got a new quarterback. But I think Nebraska is going to be better than Iowa. So let's move up. Minnesota, Purdue, Nebraska. Let's drop Iowa all the way down to 5. Brett Bielema. I'm going to put Brett Bielema in the basement, and I'm going to put Pat Fitzgerald up at 6. I know the Wildcats only won 3 games last year, but Fitzgerald is too good of a coach. And it says right here, right now, that out of all of the coaches, all 14 coaches in the Big Ten, I'm telling you that Pat Fitzgerald is the best coach out of all of them. And I don't think that the Cats are going to finish in the basement in the Big Ten West. So I would have voted the number 1s the way that they voted them, but I would drop Iowa way down. I'll drop Illinois as well. That's how I'm breaking it down here on this Tuesday. John says that OSU defense is unproven. Michigan should be the favorite. Well, sure. We could also say that the Michigan defense is unproven, and they lose their coordinator, and they lose, their top 2 players on defense, John. So I'll buy that OSU defense, just because they're bringing in the defensive coordinator from Oklahoma State, who did a nice job, and you're not used to saying that from a team in the Big 12 on defense in Oklahoma State, but it happened. But talent-wise, that they have that. I think Ohio State brings back – I think Michigan's going to score more than 40 points this year. Ohio State scored 45 points last year and led the country, and they've got most of their players back. They lost some really talented wide receivers, but I know that the guys that they have coming back, including Smith and Jigba, he's the best college wide receiver I've ever seen. So where that game is being played, that's why, John, if we're sitting here and the game was in Ann Arbor, man, it would be a lot closer than what you're talking about. But I don't have any problem with you going out on that limb and saying, hey, that you would vote for Michigan. And if you really look, the total votes, most people had Michigan. When you look at that, coming in at number 2, it's a huge gap between. It's not as big of a gap between 1 and 2 and 2 and 3. It's just those first place votes, and I think a lot of people like if it's in a consensus, the presumptive championship game as we sit here at the end of July is Alabama and Ohio State. Nobody's picking anybody else to be in the championship game. So, You just drop it down a little bit, considering where the game is at. That's why they're going with it. But you know what? One thing that we know, John, is that as soon as all the games start, you throw everything out of the window because none of it counts. It's what we talk about here in the off season. So you're taking your shot. I'm not here to tell you you're wrong. And in fact, I hope you're right. Why I'm yelling, but I'm a little, you get a little football. Football is upon us. We're ready. All off season, we've sit here and we've talked about schedules. We're talking about players. We're talking about what's going to happen. And now when you get those coaches and you get those players and they start talking about it, then you start feeling like, wow, this is getting ready to happen. And I like people messaging in and giving their thoughts on what's going to go down. Otis saying it didn't matter who was the favorite last year. Did it? No, it didn't. That's a great point, Otis. It sure didn't. John's basing off of last year. Michigan was able to run at will. And you know what, John? If you're making an argument that, that Michigan had a fantastic running attack and that was their identity last year, I would agree with you there. And then if you're going to come back at me and say, you know what? Olusegun Oluwatimi was a top 3 center in all of football last year. And as much as, you're a fan of Michigan and you liked Andrew Vastardis and what he brought to the center position, Oluwatimi, just basing it on the rankings, is a better center. And if you look at something like Pro Football Focus, who grades out how an offensive lineman will do pass protecting and run protecting, Oluwatimi is the best in the country at run blocking. So now you got a center who you could say is an upgrade. I'll say it in the run game for sure, where Michigan, that's what they hung their hat on. And, Trente Jones, who came in, they tore his nameplate off last year. What number was Jones? 53. They put an 80 on him, so they'd put him in as a tight end in some of these, what Michigan was calling a Buffalo package. In these short yarded situations, they got another tackle out there to run the ball. Trente Jones is a road grader when it comes down to firing off the ball and being physical as an offensive lineman. I'm thinking, and you can hold me to it. Go ahead. I think Harbaugh said that coming out of spring camp, that Trente Jones had the best spring out of any Michigan football player. He was at least one of the players that he identified first as having the best spring for Michigan. It looks like he jumped up and grabbed the right tackle job. Michigan overall, whatever you think of the Joe Moore Award for the best offensive line, they put a lot of different variables in there to judge the best offensive line, but they had a very good offensive line, and they have a very good offensive line coming back this year. And they have 2 very explosive backs. The offense, I'll tell you this, between Michigan and Ohio State has the most explosive offense in the country, and Michigan's right on their heels. And Michigan, I think, I think Michigan's going to throw the ball a lot more. Both of their backs catch the ball out of the backfield really well. And you've got Matt Weiss as the offensive coordinator. He's a quarterback coach. They're going to be throwing a lot more. Plus, they got a lot of talent at wide receiver as well. That's why when people ask you how you think Michigan's offense is going to do without Haskins and the offensive linemen, they say, I think they're going to throw the ball a lot more. They've got talented quarterbacks, talented wide receivers, an excellent tight end, and 2 explosive backs that can catch the ball as well as run the ball between the tackles. And, there's a couple X factors. They got A.J. Henning, who will probably run the ball more than he catches it. And, you start going through the wide receivers and who's going to be the go-to guy. You want to argue over Cornelius Johnson and Ronnie Bell, who's coming back for the injury. They got a home run threat in Andrell Anthony, who is, I think, the best yards after catch, but I think their best home run hitter, the guy that can take the top off of a defense, is Roman Wilson. That's a lot of chess pieces we're moving around here and talking about. It's fun to talk about the Michigan offense. They are explosive, and they are going to be pretty good. John just subscribed to the channel. Good job, John. Thank you. We appreciate that. John, I think a first-timer here, as somebody's messaging in as well. Here's something for you, John. We're here every day at 1 o'clock talking about Michigan football and basketball, but a lot of Michigan football talk. You like talking about Michigan football? This is a very good place to stop by 1 o'clock every day, because anything that is happening with the Wolverines, whatever the latest in Michigan sports is, we are going to talk about it. And yeah, do we have a little bit more jump in our step today because you see the coaches out there, and you're going to see the players, and they're in Indianapolis. It does get the juices flowing a little bit more, and it takes a little bit for me to just maybe slow it down a little bit. September 3rd is going to be here before we know it. And Michigan's going to be out there on the field. Let's continue with the feedback. I'll do this all day. Read the feedback. Jeremy, this poll is 3-7 in the last 10 years. A pick of the Big Ten winners, so history is on our side. Is that it? 3-7? Maybe we should just start betting against, Jeremy, all of the assembled media. I know this just by picking Michigan over the last few years. Let's see. Let me just go back. In 2016 was when they were short. That short, JT Barrett was short. Everybody argues about. And then I can remember, was it 2018 where they gave up 62 points? And then I said, well, that's it. I don't know how you could pick Michigan again. But actually in the preseason of that year that they gave up the 62 points. Let me just think it through here for a minute. And my point is that when you go to 2018, that is when they gave up the 62 points. I thought that team, it was now or never. Like they were sitting there and they had a really good club, and they weren't able to get it done. Let me just go back. This took me a long time to get here, but I promise it's going to be worth it. Back to 2016, they were that short. So it felt like they had plateaued because the next year, they lost at home. They gave them a hell of a game in the first half. Some people wanted to argue that, Michigan kept that game close. It was a close game against the Buckeyes. Haskins, you remember him coming in late. Michigan ended up losing by double digits. And it was like the big argument, well, did Michigan get blown out or did it keep it close? I mean, that's what we're talking about. Well, then you get to 2018, and I thought, Michigan, they got a pretty good team. They got a 5-star quarterback coming in Shea Patterson. I liked the defense. I liked what they had, and that's when they gave up 62 points. And it almost felt like that's it. How would you ever pick, Michigan to win, except you went to the next year and they were getting Shea Patterson back they were getting a returning starter at quarterback. Their offensive line looked like it was the best that they had in a decade. Meanwhile, Ohio State was getting a new head coach in Ryan Day. There was no more Urban Meyer. Plus, the game was in Ann Arbor. So I thought, hey, this is going to be Michigan's opportunity. And, the game being at home, and they still gave up 56 points. So, all of that is, there have been a few times where I've liked Michigan in the offseason, and, then it quickly became apparent that it wasn't going to happen. And then there have been some seasons I didn't like them at all. Then you got into the season and the way Michigan played and the way Ohio State played, that 62-point performance. That was one where, remember how Ohio State, all season long, Maryland scored 50 points on them. And you're thinking, all right, Michigan's got a chance. All right, I didn't do a good job there talking, but Jeremy, it was a good question and a good point. Third-minded, they really need to establish a lethal passing game to beat Ohio State. Yeah, I think that they're going to have to score, like this year, if you said, hey, first one to 40 is going to win the game. I thought Michigan just had to get to 30 this year, and they're going to have to keep Ohio State under 30 points. Meanwhile, 42-27. It's a long ways off when you talk about how to beat a potent passing attack at home. You know, as much as I want Michigan to throttle it up and start throwing the ball and really start scoring a bunch of points, I think in that last game, when you're playing a team as high octane as Ohio State, that's where a ground game can really be your best friend. So I'm not sure it's going to be a lethal passing game where it's fire, matching fire, as much as it's going to be Michigan having a balanced attack and then being able to make some plays on defense. John likes Edwards out of the backfield. I'm with you on that. Donovan Edwards, there's been a little bit, John, I don't want to say you're totally new here, but part of the discussion, or if there have been some arguments on this Michigan Football Today show, it has been about how are they going to distribute the ball between Blake Corum and Donovan Edwards, because there are a lot of people, just like there are a lot of people with J.J. McCarthy, that think Michigan's ceiling and with their offense, it is better with J.J. McCarthy. This is what people are saying, some people. And they're also saying the ceiling and the offense, firepower, is better with Donovan Edwards, that he is just that much more of a back. Now, look, with the running backs, you can play both. Like, you could start Corum and you can play Edwards as much as you want. And so it's more difficult at quarterback, although maybe Jim Harbaugh, if he was sitting here saying, hey, what you're saying there about the running backs, that's how we're playing it with the quarterbacks. And that seems a little dangerous, but they've got nice choices, and it's good to have. When's the last time Michigan had quarterbacks like this? When's the last time Michigan had running backs like this? When's the last time Michigan had wide receivers like this? The answer is 2019, and it didn't work out there, but that doesn't mean it's not going to work out this year. Otis is stoked over the conference adding teams like they did. He likes the additions of UCLA and USC. It's going to be better long-term than the SEC. If I ever get an opportunity to go to SoCal, I am there. Otis, I am with you. I'm going to take you back 3 years ago. I had put a plan in the previous year, so maybe I even have to go back 4 to 5 years. I was zeroing in on the game in Seattle, Michigan at Washington. I knew somebody who had gone there and it had some experience on tailgating at Husky Stadium, out in the water, sailgating, got a boat, and it was going to happen. And then the pandemic happened, so it didn't happen. Now I've got my friend who's a Michigan State fan who called me up this week and say, hey, who was that guy that was going to hook you up with all that sailgating and everything? Because I guess Michigan State's going out to Washington. But your point about going out to USC, I've been to the Rose Bowl, and it met my expectations. It was 2004. Matt Leinart was the quarterback, Big Mike Williams for USC. Michigan lost the game. But the Rose Bowl was everything that I thought it was going to be. It was, I don't like the Beach Boys. And here I was, down there in that valley before the game, hanging out with some folks. And the sun was, shining in a little bit. I'm like, wow, man, this is as picturesque as it gets. This is everything that I ever, this is football's Valhalla. And then somebody started playing some Beach Boys, and it was like, wow, that is music to my ears. I love it. So yeah, I one day want to go myself to USC, to the Coliseum, see Michigan play USC at the Coliseum. I'm with you, Otis, on that. Let's hook up out there. And it can just keep happening here. Otis never thought he would see the Big Ten compared to the SEC again. This type of game for the Big Ten as compared to the SEC. He hates the auto check. I'm with you here. Here's Hewitt. Hewitt X with a bunch of Z's. He believes JJ needs to be the starter to have the best chance to win in Columbus. Hewitt, I think that there are a lot of people who think exactly like you do. And I think by then, there's a lot of people that feel like you right off the bat. And I don't think that they're going to be, I think they're going to be disappointed if they are expecting or hoping that McCarthy is going to be the starter game one. I think game 5, I am predicting that he is going to start the game at Iowa. That's my prediction. But I do think after 11 games that we should know who is the best at the controls and who gives Michigan the best chance to win. So, it's hard. I think everybody knows where you're coming from. KC, you went to the Rose Bowl when it was still epic. Yeah, that's true. It was before the college football playoff. But still, if you get Michigan, there's still something about it. It's the whole thing. All the stuff, all of the history, everything that you would expect. I mean, if you're a biggest sports fan, you're like, man, I really hope this would happen to go somewhere, and it just meets every single expectation that you could possibly have. That was it for the Rose Bowl. And then Michigan lost the game. I remember I came away. It was my first trip to California as well. And so the next day, I was going down to San Diego. We're stopping at Orange County and in the beach along the way. And I'm thinking, I know why these California people don't care as much about football. They're out here on the beach. I'm out here on the beach. I went to, what's the island off of San Diego? Coronado. I'm out there at the hotel. The sun's going down with my sand in my feet in the sand, and the sun's going down. I'm like, come on. I don't care. I think it was one of the only times I said, I don't care if Michigan lost the game. Who cares? I just went to the Rose Bowl. That's it for California, man. They don't. You understand why they don't care as much about sports. Then I came back to Michigan and it ratcheted up, and I cared even more. So that's it. Yeah, the pandemic ruined so much. He's followed Michigan from Florida to Texas and everywhere in between, but not California yet. Otis says Harbaugh is not stupid. He will start the best quarterback. And John is going to compare McNamara to Greasy. He just got it done, nothing flashy, but he's underrated. Yeah, I think that there are two players in general for Michigan that are underrated and underappreciated. And I think Cade McNamara is one of them. And we understand with the hotshot quarterback behind him and one that runs all over and makes the kind of plays like he did in his very first game with that touchdown to Baldwin. The nature of the position, having the backup quarterback anyways, even if he had never played a snap, people would be still clamoring for him. So you understand it. And then McNamara was not flashy. McNamara handed the ball off a million times. Sometimes he only throw like 10 times a game. You're like, what are we talking about here? But he didn't, there wasn't a lot of negative plays. He ran the team. He didn't throw a lot of picks until the end of the season. So I do think he's underrated by Michigan fans and underappreciated a little bit. Almost goes with the territory. It does go with the territory. Blake Corum is the other one. And he's got the same thing. He's got the hot shot, local, superstar player behind him who that when he got on the field last year and got the majority of the snaps against Maryland, sprung out and looked like a, future All-American. And then even against Ohio State when he was out there, remember he threw his hand out and made that catch, and it was like, wow. So I get Donovan Edwards, hype. I get J.J. McCarthy, hype. And, it's good. It's good to deal with all of that. All right, Big Ten East standings. I had that. Also got you those Big 10 West predictions, not standings, predictions and how the media ordered it. Two things that I thought were interesting. I mentioned that Kevin Warren said he was 100% behind playoff expansion today, which was forthcoming by the commissioner. These tweets that I have from Pete Thamel, who works for ESPN, I thought at least gets the scuttlebutt, at least starts making you thinking a little bit more. Last year when they came out with the 12-team proposal for a playoff, like I was like hoping for an 8, and then they came out with a 12. And when they went through the whole thing, I was like, wow, I get what they're talking about. But I think maybe they were doing it to kind of say 12 to kind of run an 18 playoff through. And then as soon as they talked about it and it looked like it was going to happen, they shut it down almost as quickly. And there hasn't been great talk about the expanded playoffs, but just over the last 2 weeks has heated up a little bit. Pete Thamel putting a tweet out. This was from today, where he said, at SEC Media Days, Commissioner Greg Sankey acknowledged to ESPN there's an increased chatter about the potential of going to 16. Thamel came back today and tweeted this. One new wrinkle that came up when the Big Ten ADs met this week about the playoff is increased conversation about going to a 16-team playoff. OSU AD Gene Smith to ESPN, quote, 16 just seems to be out there. You can't ignore it. That's the end of the quote from Gene Smith, who has been helping out Commissioner Kevin Warren and the other sounding board that the commissioner has, who the commissioner thanked in his opening remarks today was Barry Alvarez, the former athletic director and longtime head coach at Wisconsin and longtime, everybody knows Barry Alvarez. So I don't know, like I always thought 8 was like, okay, I'm with 8. And then 12 with the first 4 teams getting a bye, and then the 8 teams, the first round games being on site. Like if you were 5 through 8, 4 of those sites were going to be at a home conference or wherever. Like if Michigan would have been ranked there, they would have had that game in Ann Arbor. So the idea that you might be able to bring like an Alabama or Georgia or Miami of Florida up to Michigan in November or early December, very attractive. I don't think the SEC wants that. And so I think that's why the SEC said, hey, forget that. Let's go to 16. Although I don't think the SEC, we're in such a dominating position right now with the 4. I think that they were the ones that put the stop to everything. They were just like, look, why do we want to do anything? We've got this thing cornered. We've got the market cornered. But 16 teams, like how many games are these teams going to play? Like they do have to cut off. So, maybe the days and I'm all right with the days of non-conference games. I wouldn't mind one tune-up game and then one very interesting game. But so most of the conferences, not the Big Ten. The Big Ten has added a Big Ten game. So they only have 3 games to play with it. But if you look at Michigan this year, they got 3 easy games. And the next year they got 3 easy games. Sometimes, they have a game like Washington, a home and home. They're supposed to play Texas in the future. They're supposed to play Oklahoma in the future. But I don't think anybody thinks that those games are going to happen. So there's my I wanted to let everybody know, because there is whether you want to, when you hear people saying there is momentum now, people are going to talk about a 16-game playoff. That is a topic for the next week or two to discuss amongst ourselves. How do I feel about it? The first thing I think about is just the amount of games. That's a lot. They're going to have to cut some of the games off of the regular season, and then add them to the playoff, which I'm okay. I'm okay of messing with the non-conference slate, because right now, most of the non-conference slates are not very attractive. Cut it down by 2. And do you really have to play a warm-up game? I think this is going to end up hurting teams like in the state, the directional teams in the MAC. Maybe Eastern doesn't get a payday to go to Michigan State. Maybe, Western is not coming in and just get that fat check from Michigan. And I know there's some Western fans that say, hey, we were in the mix a couple of years ago. I know, but the more that they're going to add at the end, I'm not sure you're going to be able to get in at the beginning. So that's one thing to think about. There's a lot of things to think about when it comes down to it. Otis was at the game. Michigan lost 19-17 because Greasy tripped on some grass blades before making it to the end zone. What would that have been? 96? I think what you're talking about there. That game against Alabama. I remember him. All right, 2 more on the feedback. We go to Third Minded, who says the team won those games in spite of Cade's poor play A team that wants to be taken serious has to have a quarterback that can win games. Cade can't do that, or not shown that he had. Oh, let me say, Cade can't do that, or not has shown he can. Hasn't shown that he can. JJ's legs are the difference. Yeah, look, third, a little bit of this. You're not necessarily singing to the choir. I'm not sitting here wearing a shiny robe or anything, but I think that Cade's going to be your. McNamara is going to start, and McCarthy is going to start by October 1st. So again, a little bit of singing to the choir. And we wrap it up with Otis, who is for playoff expansion as long as every team has the same criteria. For instance, just because Notre Dame has a good regular season doesn't qualify them for the playoff. It has to be 4, 8, 16, 32, 64, so it can be fair across the board. Yeah, as much in the games, and I was just going back to the 2016 season for Michigan and the 2015 season, and Michigan was losing all of those games to Ohio State. They didn't necessarily have that big of a problem. They were losing bowl games, except that first year against Florida. But they were losing to Ohio State. That was the problem. In a lot of those years, if there was a 12-team playoff, certainly a 16-team playoff, Michigan would have been in the postseason. And the thing about when USC, these are just things to think about. When USC and UCLA get into the mix, Michigan's going to still have to play Ohio State every year in the regular season. They're going to have to probably play Ohio State twice. I don't really see any way around that. It's not like they're going to say, well, they'll probably meet anyway. That's not true because of the amount of people that tune in for that rivalry game. They're always going to play Michigan, Ohio State. So Michigan is likely going to have to play Ohio State twice. That's going to be a big break for other teams, almost all of the other teams that are not going to have that tie-in. So let's just say if you're Michigan State and you don't have to play Ohio State every year, that's a break. That's a break. However they end up rolling that out, that is going to be a break. All right. It was great to talk with everybody here. It kind of feels like it's, everybody just hanging out and talking about college football. We're here tomorrow. Well, I'm going to watch the rest of the afternoon session. Let's see what they're talking about right now.
Getting set to visit with us on our set next. Stick around here on Big Ten Media Days.
Look like they're out there shooting some hoops. I want to remind everybody you're watching this show here today. You want to know what Michigan's next move on the recruiting front or anything else, you can join up the Maize and Blue Review today. Go to michigan.rivals.com. And right now, all the way until the opener, you can get free access to premium content for free until September the 3rd. Use the code UofMFree22 at checkout. I am on the message board all day long, posing questions, responding to threads, looking information up, talking about Michigan football all day, all night. And when I'm not on the weekends, I'm there on the board talking about Michigan. A little bit like this. So appreciate. Oh, you want one more? I got one more thing for you. I do. Let's just because I do have one more item for you, and it comes from the Big Ten. And let me just take. It's going to be quick. It's Jim Harbaugh. I doesn't want to hear Jim Harbaugh from media days. That's what I'm asking. Everybody does. Everybody wants to hear the coach. So I've loaded one of them up. And it's just going to take me a hot second to get him up there. Okay. There it is. Let me blow that up. Some of this is a little practice. It's a little practice by me. Here's Jim Harbaugh up on the podium just a few minutes ago in Indy.
Yes, It's been a really good continuation from last year's team. I think some of it, players that were on the team, they put in that work. They know what it was like, and that good feeling of taking care of your business and seeing it have success and be rewarded for it. And they also saw other players on the team, guys like Aiden Hutchinson, Hassan Haskins, David Ajabo, who put in that work, got that work in, and how much it paid off for them. Using your head, using your noodle, pretty easy to think, yeah, I want to do it just like they did it. I want to be where they are now. And it's been, continuation of that this entire offseason. I mean, just been tremendous.
There he is, Jim Harbaugh. Took to the podium a little bit earlier today. He'll be in some informal settings and the players as well. I'll be watching all that today, and we'll see here tomorrow on Maize and Blue Review, Michigan football today. Thanks for everybody for contributing. Thanks to Brandon Justice for stopping by. See you tomorrow. Have a great day. Goodbye.